Now, this presentation is going to teach you the marketing principles behind the creation of great ads. As we look at the marketing collateral during this presentation, I want everyone to remember that we're going to be talking on a principle basis here. Now, here's what you don't want to do. Don't look at the ads that we're going to review and say, hey, look, there's a great ad. Let me grab that and go use it in my business. Ads need to be customized for every individual business. You can't expect them to be cookie cutter, but you can expect them to generate new ideas, new ways to innovate your business, and new ways to position your compelling offers. So I want to highlight the basic marketing principles that make these ads great, so that as you look at them, you can take some of these things and use them as you write your own ads. In fact, I would strongly encourage you to start becoming a collector of advertisements, particularly print and mail advertisements, just because they happen to be a little bit easier to look at, to catalog, and to inventory for later use. I mean, let's face it, it's difficult to do that with a TV or radio commercial. Now, one of the ways that you get good at marketing is to look at a lot of it. Skim through the ads that are in your mail every day. Check out your Valpak coupons, newspaper ads, and what you see and hear on TV and radio. And then compare these ads to the principles that we're going to discuss today. Start educating yourself on principle-based marketing, and your own marketing will dramatically improve. So that's what we're going to do in this presentation. Let's examine the principles that make these ads successful. So let's take a look at our first ad. This is an ad for sunrooms titled, Why November? This is actually a 4-page ad. We call it a 4-page wrapper. These pages are approximately 11 inches tall by 9 inches wide. And what's great about an ad like this is you've got quite a bit of real estate to work with. Now let's look at the principles that govern this particular ad. First, we have all of the different areas of the educational spectrum being hit here. You've heard me discuss the educational spectrum before in previous calls. Here's an example of the educational spectrum. When someone is interested in buying a product or service, they jump on this educational spectrum on the far left side and slowly start moving to the right. When they get all the way down to the right, that's when they buy what you sell. But in between the far left and the far right, you must understand what is actually taking place. The far left is where your prospects are actually considering whether or not they even need your product or service. This is where you must sell them on the idea that whatever you sell will actually benefit them in some way. We refer to this section as the benefits of ownership. Now, as they enter the middle of the spectrum, they have now decided they can benefit from what you sell. But now they start to consider the objections for completing the sale. They may think it's too expensive. It will take them too long to learn how to use it. They won't know exactly how to apply it. They don't have the time to implement it, or 1,000 other possible objections. This is the section where you must overcome these objections. We refer to the middle section as objections to ownership. And then finally, they enter the far right side of the spectrum. Now they have decided they want what you sell. They've weighed their objections and decided to proceed with the purchase. But now they have to decide who they want to buy it from. Who is offering the best deal in terms of value for the price they pay? We refer to this right side as the vendor selection criteria. This is where you have to sell yourself, your process, and your business. Now, in this 4-page ad, we've got all 3 areas covered: benefits of ownership, objections to ownership, and vendor selection. Now the ad overall is heavy on vendor selection. So the principle that you want to pull out of this is that when you've got a lot of room, you can cover all of the different areas of the educational spectrum. I'll point these out as we go through this. You see, we've got an interesting scenario here. In fact, you'll see this a couple of times as we go through this presentation. I'm referring to the fact that this is a fairly heavy text ad, so to speak. And heavy text ads make a story more believable. I'll show you a couple of other examples of this shortly. Now, heavy text ads are based on the principle known as the more you tell, the more you sell. Now, the more you tell, the more you sell principle obviously doesn't work very well on a small ad. But the more you educate your prospects, the farther they move down the educational spectrum. There's a second principle involved here called telling a story. So let's take a look at this ad. In this ad, we talk about why November might be the best time to add a sunroom. As we go into this ad, there are a lot of details that make the story in this ad believable. It's so easy to throw a story out there without adding much detail, but the result is that it's not all that believable. Since I'm sure you can't make out the copy very well by looking at this ad on a PowerPoint slide, I'll read the ad and point out some things to highlight the principles that we've discussed. First of all, we've got a picture of Kip Lee, who's the owner. This makes this ad a little more personal. And the ad is written as a first-person story. So if it's a first-person story and we put the picture of the owner on there, then that's going to help enhance the believability of what the ad says. So let's start with the first column. This year, as part of a daring test, I'm willing to give you a bona fide 20% off so we can keep our crews busy. And then we go into this entire story that reveals our vulnerability. We're going to explain to the prospect reading this ad that we usually sell a lot of sunrooms, but in the colder months, and especially around the holiday months, we just don't sell as much. Then we give them all the details. Now be sure you pay close attention because I want you to see the level of detail that goes into this ad in order to make this story believable. For instance, in paragraph number 2, it says, in a normal month, we sell about 12 to 18 sunrooms and an average of 15. Last November, we sold 5, and in December, just 4. You can see the problem. I met with my management staff to discuss solutions. I explained to them that it's actually better for us to lose money. Now let me stop here for a moment. Notice the way that sentence is phrased. I'm telling this prospect information, but I'm not telling it directly to them. I'm telling it to them third person by explaining what I told my management staff. It's a little technique here that makes this story more believable. So instead of saying, hey prospect, here's what happens, I'm saying, hey prospect, here's what I told my staff. I told them, I explained it to them, that it's actually better for us to lose money than it is to have idle workers. Now Kip goes on to explain that because of this situation, he's willing to give the prospect a full 20% off the sales price. He gives them some deadlines, and if you look closely at this ad, you'll notice that there are a number of things here that makes this ad powerful and overwhelming. It tells a story. It's written in first person. There's a high level of detail. There's tons of evidence. On the right side of the ad, we have evidence that shows how much these sunrooms normally cost. We put the prices and we give examples. So keep all of these things in mind as you write your ads. However, this isn't going to be an appropriate way for you to handle all of your ads. There's different styles and different situations that you must take into consideration. So again, I want to stress to you that you can't just grab an ad from your ad library in your e-learning system and expect it to work for your business. You want to use those ads to reveal to you the marketing principles that work and then apply those principles to your own business. This ad also contains scarcity, which says there's a strict limit of 15 sunrooms to be sold under this offer. And as I mentioned before, we also use the principle of vulnerability here. In this third paragraph, we talk about how we don't normally do as well during these colder months. We also admit our vulnerability when we say, to be honest, we have no idea if this will work or not. We may be overwhelmed with business, or we may hear the proverbial crickets chirping in our showroom. Can you see how that's something that most people wouldn't want to admit? Hey, we're doing something that we don't know if it will work. But that in and of itself becomes a principle that says if you admit your weakness, if you admit your uncertainty, then your story becomes more believable and more powerful. You'll notice at the bottom of the first page, we do have an offer for a free sunroom idea guide. This is really a default offer for people that aren't ready to take the plunge and buy a sunroom right now. Now, this is important to note because overall, this ad is specifically geared towards now buyers. This is an ad that tends to skim the now buyers and compels them to raise their hand and purchase the product. Now, let's go back and talk about principles again for a minute. This is not an ad that you would run all the time. You have to look at these things and understand that we can't take one single message like the slow time of the year and emulate it all the time and in all of your marketing. This is an ad that is appropriate to run on occasion when the time frames make the story valid, and even then, you wouldn't want to run this ad all the time. Okay, let's look at page 2 of this 4-page ad. It says 7 reasons to add a sunroom. Now, this is where we list the benefits of ownership. And if you look at page 2 and page 3, understand that these 2 pages would actually be seen together. Remember, this ad is a wrapper, so page 2 will appear on the left and page 3 on the right. So now, we've got the benefits of ownership going, and this is where we talk about reclaiming the outdoors, invigorating yourself, and all of those kinds of things. On the right-hand side of this page, we get into some pretty heavy vendor selection items, as well as social proof. Social proof is a powerful principle to remember in marketing. The social proof here says there's 790 people that have bought sunrooms from us. Here are some photos. And social proof tends to work better when the people that you list for your social proof are more like the target market you're going after. For example, social proof works better when targeted geographically. That's why we put the city name on the actual photos of each sunroom, so that the prospect knows these aren't just stock photos that we pulled out of the corporate catalog. These are actual rooms that we built right here in this local community. So that's an additional marketing principle for you to remember. The more people are like the target market in your social proof, the more that social proof is likely to have a compelling effect. And by the way, that likeness, that similarity, has to do with more than just geography. It has to do with race. It has to do with income or socioeconomics. It has to do with religion. It has to do with gender and so on. Now, you don't have to use all of these, but just as a principle, the more people are like you, the more they will connect with your message. But from a marketing standpoint, you have to look at all of these and say, my target market, who are they? Who can we put in the ads that's more like them? And I want you to notice that the reason we put the name of the town on the photo was to enhance the believability and to increase the social proof. These aren't just a bunch of jobs. They're a bunch of local jobs. Prospects look at this and start to ask themselves, what do these guys know that I don't? What am I missing? Or what will I miss if I don't buy from this company as well? At the bottom of this section, it says, here's how we've earned their trust. And there's some bullet points there that give the reasons why people would want to do business with this company. These are all what we refer to as the vendor selection items. On the right-hand side of the page, page 3 of this ad, there's a section labeled 7 Common Misconceptions About Sunrooms. Now here we list the objections to ownership, and we address some of the more common objections. Again, by way of principles, we would not always cover the benefits of ownership, the objections of ownership, and the vendor selection criteria in an ad. We did here because we had the space to do so. Now on the left-hand side of this page, it says, listen to what our customers have to say. And if you look at this, you'll notice that to enhance the social proof, we've again listed their town. We also included their full name, which also makes it much more believable. See, it's not just Joan G. It's Joan Glassaguli. It's not just Constance S. It's Constance and Raymond Stevens in Savannah, and Wesley and Mary Lou Beavers in Bluffton. If you don't have customers whose names you can use, go get some. They'll let you use their names. You've just got to ask. We also put photos in there so that our prospect can see that these people are a little bit older like they are. These people represent our target market. Let's face it, older people with discretionary income for the most part buy sunrooms. 25 to 35-year-olds are not the people we're looking for. They have other interests at that age. However, one quick note here. Think how many people today, because of the bad economy, are starting up their own businesses, many of them operating from their homes. A lot of these people are older people who aren't ready to retire but find it difficult to compete in the workforce with younger workers. How much easier would it be to sell a sunroom if the prospect could write off the entire expense of adding a sunroom as a legitimate business deduction? A home office is a legitimate business expense and can provide a hefty deduction on one's taxes for many years to come. No one says your new home business office can't be a sunroom. I bring this up to emphasize the importance today for businesses to begin to think outside the box and how critical innovation is to dominating your market. This new target market could easily double or triple a sunroom company's revenue and profits. Now, directly below the social proof pictures is a partial list of 790 satisfied customers. More social proof. And the quantity of social proof used in this ad just continues to grow, doesn't it? We've already told them we have 790 satisfied customers. Now on this page are some photos and some quotes, and down here are a bunch of names to reinforce that social proof. See, this is just a very powerful ad. And if you go to the last page, this is where we have a series of highly compelling offers. Several things I want to point out to you here. It says, buy now, and you'll also receive 4 free bonuses. There's the scarcity factor again. If you buy now, you'll receive these. We also have what we call a mega irresistible offer. Now, a mega irresistible offer is exactly what you see on this page. It's where we stack up so many free bonuses that it becomes not just irresistible, but mega irresistible. And you'll notice that they get 2 out of the 3 bonuses on the left, and then if they call to set an appointment, they'll get 2 more bonuses. So they're going to get a total of 4 bonuses on top of the 20% discount. This is a very compelling offer. Now again, this isn't an ad you would want to run all the time because it would lose its effectiveness. But if you look at this, I want you to notice what we did here to dramatically emphasize the value of this offer. At the top left, it says, do this first. Then to the right, it says, then do this. This makes it easy for the prospect to understand what to do and the order to do it. Notice we have a high dollar value of $3,589 attached to the bonuses. But notice on the left-hand side, there are 3 coupons. These are the actual vouchers, but we tell them that they can only use 2 of them. This is a proprietary technique that I want to share with you and encourage you to use this technique in your future offers whenever it's appropriate. This technique forces the prospect to carefully weigh the value of each bonus, to think through each one of them specifically, and to become more heavily engaged in the buying process. They're going to have to decide which one of these do I want versus which one do I not want. This makes the offer mentally stimulating, and it gets them more engaged. See, if you tell them, here are 3 bonuses we're going to give you, well, they just glance over them and think to themselves, hey, great, some free stuff. And it really doesn't build value in their mind. But when you force them to select, they carefully weigh each bonus very carefully to determine which ones offer them the most personal value. So overall, this is a great ad. It works well when used in the right situation, in the right dose, and in the right quantity. You can't run this ad all the time. In fact, this particular client wanted to run this ad after the initial run. In November 2009, it worked so well they wanted to run it again in July of 2010. And they wanted to change it to Why July and talk about how people don't buy sunrooms as much in the summer months. Unfortunately, the story just didn't come across as believable, and it just didn't work very well. So then they trotted it out again in November of 2010, and it worked pretty darn good again. Now, not as good as it did in '09, but it still produced great results. And then they ran it again last year, and it worked good again, but not quite as good as in 2009 and not as good as in 2010. Now, why do you think it would stop working and go down over time? Well, remember that this ad is going out to their target market, which is basically seniors. And it's really an attempt to super hard skim the seniors that are now buyers. Well, in residential areas where seniors live, we can assume that there's a certain number of them that are ready to purchase a sunroom. And this ad compels a big majority of them to buy the first year this ad runs. Well, when you show up with this ad in year 2 and then again in year 3, you've already skimmed the largest percentage of buyers. And one problem is seniors don't move that often, so you don't have the turnover in population within this group. That's why this year there's potentially fewer available than last year. That's why you have to test these things on your own to find out and evaluate your target market to understand the principles of marketing and how to make them work for your target market. Now let's move on to our second ad. This is a great little ad. This ran in a money mailer. There was also a Valpak version of it. What we did is we took the top and the bottom, and we basically put it on the front and back of a postcard instead of all on one page like this one. Now the headline of this ad says, "I've taken high pressure and high prices out of the replacement window business." And like the previous ad, we put a picture of the owner on here. We put his name and the company he owns. And obviously with this one, we don't have as much room as the first ad, but we don't have as huge of a story to tell either. But just like our first ad, the principle of telling the story will work well here. Notice it's written in first person again. 3 years ago, I got so sick of the window business, I finally quit. See, there's that vulnerability again. Wow, I wouldn't expect the owner of a window company to say he's sick of the window business. So we're continuing to use some of the same principles that we used in the first ad. Now it says, "I worked for a large company that trained its salespeople to use hard closes to pressure people into paying too much for windows. I felt bad knowing people were getting their arm twisted to buy a window for $900 that only cost $300 to manufacture and install." Now, know what we just did here. We've exposed a flaw in our competition without singling anybody out and without bad-mouthing them. We're just telling them what we've hated and what we don't like. In the second paragraph, it says, "In 2002, I opened a small office in Baltimore and Laurel. It's not real fancy, but the rent is low. My windows are the best, but I don't mark them up 3 to 4 times over cost like many companies do. My pledge is to offer a good, honest value on great windows. I've had over 240 customers in the last 3 years that seem to like my approach. If you're thinking about reducing your energy bills and getting new windows, give me a call. I'd love to help out." Now, some people look at this and say, "Well, God, I don't know if people are going to read all that." Well, if we can interrupt them and get them interested through this story, and they're a prospect for windows, they will read this. The reason is the story. In fact, the owner of this window company literally built his business and increased his revenue substantially using just his website and this ad. Let's look at this Valpak ad. It says, "Don't pay us a nickel for windows, siding, or doors until you say the job is done right." This ad hits the hot button most people have regarding the reputation of contractors. Overall, contractors have a bad reputation. So in this ad, we admit that right up front. The very first sentence says, "Contractors have earned a bad reputation." Wouldn't you agree? High-pressure sales, inflated prices, jobs that take forever to get done, Basically, contractors just don't treat their customers very well. 17 years ago, when we started this company, we vowed to create a different kind of company, one that does things right the first time, one that treats people with respect and does what we say we will. The problem is that even though we do things right, it's hard for folks to know ahead of time what kind of experience they'll have. After all, nobody puts an ad in the Valpak that says, "We stink." That's why we pioneered the industry's first and only satisfaction first policy, which simply means that you only pay us when the job is complete and you say you're satisfied. And they go on to talk about their satisfaction first policy. This is a good way to articulate a very powerful advantage that this company has, that they don't require payment until after the job. And this is a good way to frame that competitive advantage. Now, they had the satisfaction first policy before this ad, but this ad allowed them to communicate that policy in a compelling way. It made it more believable to his prospects. But think about this ad as you're flipping through the Valpak. Have you ever flipped through a Valpak? I happened to have flipped through a Valpak just several days ago. Oh my gosh, it must have had 5,000 ads in it. It was so thick. And as I was flipping through it, I literally got tired of flipping after I'd gotten through maybe, I don't know, 20% of the deck. I just gave up. But look at this ad and look at the headline. People will read that. They can internalize that headline very quickly. And if they're interested in the topic of windows, siding, or doors, then this is going to hit their reticular activator. It's got a different look and feel because of the text. And this is something that people will read. But here's the key. If somebody is only reading the first 20% of the Valpak, and this is in the bottom 3/4, well, they might never see it. Now, that's a different issue. This is basically a self-administered Valpak mailing where you recruit a small number of other businesses to form your own marketing consortium. Now, you might ask where you would find other businesses willing to do something like this. Well, why don't you simply look at the current Valpak? All of those businesses are already using a direct mail strategy. Don't you think they might be interested in reaching the same homes Valpak is reaching, but instead of being buried in 5,000 Valpak ads, they would be one of only 11 ads in your envelope? Check out this strategy when you have time and see if it might work for you and your business. Now let's look at our next ad. This is a very simple execution of a vendor selection ad. We built over 3,682 railings, fences, and decks, and counting, with absolutely zero complaints. Want to know how? And then we list 7 hot-button issues and explain what we do to overcome all 7. Now, it's not super detailed, it's not hard to read, and it's not a lengthy ad. It has what you might consider to be a lot of text, but it's quick and easy to read text. This ad contains the free personal consultation, and notice what else it says there. No sales pressure, just helpful information. What a great way to position that sentence. No sales pressure, just helpful information. That one line helps to remove one of the biggest risk factors prospects have when contacting a company. And then we've got a special bonus offer on there as well. Now, this is an ad that, while fairly simple, works pretty well. This ad ran in the newspaper for a while, and I happen to know it worked great. Now, again, let's make sure we're working on a principal basis here. I did not just tell you to take this ad, go out there, and use it. I said, principally speaking, this is a good, simple implementation of a vendor selection ad. I actually have some grave concerns about newspaper advertising, magazine advertising, and really print advertising in general. I think that we're in an era where it's just no longer performing all that well, and the cost is not commensurate with the return on investment it produces. So you really want to think through this as you're looking at these different ads. There's still a place for print advertising. I don't want you to hear me wrong, but it's shifting and moving towards other things, especially online advertising and other types of media. Now, in our next presentation, I'm going to continue with this topic of great ads. I'll show you several terrific ads that make great interrupters, as well as ways to make all of your marketing and advertising dramatically more effective and productive. I'll also teach you how to use all of these ads in such a way that you will be able to easily adapt any of them to fit your business. So be sure you watch the next presentation. So, until next time, here's to your success.